I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
Happy Sunday, everybody. And Slow Motion Broadcasting is back for week 5 of this might be round 6. I think this is round 6. I didn't change that yet. Of the Formula Ford Ray Esports Weekend Warriors Series. We're at Hungary this afternoon. Speaking of Hungary, I hope you're not. Also, looking at the weather, looking pretty cool out there. I am joined in the booth by Randall McGrew. Randall, welcome in. Here we go again. We're at Hungary. We just had a race there this morning in F1.
We sure did. It was a very interesting race this morning in F1, and I expect to see a very interesting race here in the Formula Fords.
It should be a great one here. We're going to have to go get right back out on track, though, because we have about 5 minutes left in qualifying. So, let's get to it. Actually, why don't we bring up points first, Randall? You want to do that? Let's do that.
Let's take a look at those points. We bring up first the Spec 1 division. James Berry leading the way over Jason Green, in second place, with Megan Overstreet rounding out the top 3 in that division. And then we'll jump over to Spec 2, where we see Peter True leading the way over Jimmy Litbaka and David Foy. Looking at the timing sheet, it does not look like Litbaka is here or True. So David Foy in a good position today to get a lot of points back. And then jumping over to that Masters division, Antonio Reese leads the way with a commanding lead over Alan DeGassis and Gary Walbot there in third.
Yeah, looking at the times in practice, Randall, there were some pretty good lap times getting thrown down there by Jörg Mani. Again, seems like he's always right up there at the top, no matter where we go. And this track is a bit more technical than where they were last week, I'd say. Still doing pretty good.
Yeah, James Berry leading him by nearly half a second, 4.39 tenths over him. And looking at the timing screen, most of that is coming in the second sector of the track. So the most technical bit of the track is where James Berry is faster than Jörg Mani.
Well, let's do it, Randall. Here we go. Hopefully he doesn't go into the pits.
We're going to jump on board for a lap as he's coming around the final corner. You need to get back to the power as early as possible to get a good lap time and to set up the next lap. You see he's using all the track running all the way out onto the exit curbing. Track is a bit more forgiving in cars this slow, as we're going to see him now abandon this lap. So he's happy with what he has, and he's going to pull it back to the pits, and we're going to have to try again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, James, for doing that. People tend to do that sometimes. Let's go to the 253 car here, if I can find it. Looks like Joshua Wilkie's out on a lap, Randall.
Joshua Wilkie starting a flying lap now. Goes across the starting line. He's going to keep it to the left-hand side of the track. We have a very tight right-hander that's going to be your turn 1. And we got quite a big run up to turn 1. So we could see 3, 4, maybe even 5 wide action on the opening lap. You see he gets there on the apex curve and lets it go all the way back out Now these slower cars, they don't necessarily have to use all the track width in some of these places, but it definitely will play the advantage. He's going to take this. So I've seen a lot of drivers treating this as a double apex. He's just treating it as a late apex there in turn 2. Brings the car back to the left just a little bit for that quick right-hander that is turn 3, and lets it run all the way out to the exit curving. You're going to see him stick to the left, and then as the track curves to the right, bring it over to the right, and then this blind uphill left-hander that's very difficult to see. We could almost peak that apex, the exit curving as he came across the apex, but if you're sitting at the driver's level, that's fairly blind. Makes his way up to the chicane, very quick right-left chicane. You want to use a lot of the curbing here and try to make this as straight as possible. He even clips that sausage curb on the inside just a little bit, brings the car to the right, through the left-hander. Doesn't bring the car all the way back to the left-hand side of the track. These cars being as slow as they are, they're able to take that shopping cart line and not necessarily lose any time. In fact, they would lose time trying to go all the way across the track to open up some of these entries. So we see them using the track where it's advantageous and not where they would lose time. Keeping the car to the left-hand side of the track, a very, very tricky corner. You can see a lot of people will run wide here, especially in faster cars. Right now, Wilkie keeping it well under control as it comes to the penultimate corner. A very long left-hand corner. You're waiting to get back to the power, using the exit and then bringing the car back to the left for the final corner. You want to get a nice late apex here, but you want to get to the throttle as early as possible to get that run down to the line and set your lap time.
And that puts Joshua Wilkie, whenever he decides to pop up, in 11th place right now overall, sitting second place in class. And, well, Randall, if anybody's watching this that hasn't watched it before, as we see a massive lockup there by the 120 car. But if anybody, this is their first time watching this, we've got S2, S1, and Masters, Randall. So S1 is going to be at 3,000 I rating and over. S2 is going to be 3,000 and under, with Masters being the old but not slow guys in the 60-plus range. And as you can see, when I say old but not slow, Jorg Mani and Antonio Reese are splitting well, quite literally splitting the S1 drivers at the moment.
Yeah, they have blocked out the second row in the Masters division. Soren Garrett's set a faster lap time than Jorg Mani to displace him back to third. That might actually play out in Mani's favor since they do rolling starts here. He's going to be behind the leader. He's going to be able to react to the leader better and have a slipstream down to turn 1 with the preferred line. So we'll probably see lots of moves early on at the front end of the field.
You know what I've realized about this track, and for some reason I thought, I don't know, I guess in my brain after, running in quicker cars here, it just seems like a much smaller track, but these cars around here look like it's a pretty big track for them. They might be able to get some slipstreaming here. We might see a lot of passing.
In cars this slow, every track is a slipstream track in all actuality. The draft is always going to play a role, even on tracks with not as many straightaways.
Right.
This track is classically hard to pass on. There's not a lot of passing zones, but when you get into cars that are this small and at this speed, a lot of those places that wouldn't normally be a passing zone will become passing zones. So I expect to see, as we see a little bit of a trouble there with Antonio Reese coming out of the turn 4. That curb can get you, so there's a bit of an edge on it. If you get past that edge, it can really cause you issues like it did to Reese there. But turn 4, not normally a passing zone in things like F1, but would now be a passing zone in cars of this caliber.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to it, guys. As you can see, it is ended. Qualifying has ended, letting a couple drivers finish their laps if they were on it before the 20-minute mark rolled around. And we've got Jorg Mani setting the green middle sector. Is he going to be able to do anything with it? We'll see. No, 155.1 for Jorg. Looks like Jason Green, Megan Overstreet, and Kevin Adrian all coming in and not going any quicker on their laps. So we'll go back here to the 10 car of Kevin Adrian. Ooh, that's a nice little paint job he's got there. I'm liking that thing.
Not bad looking at all. Kevin Adrian coming through that final corner, keeping it nice and tight, getting back to the throttle, running out. You see him using all of that track width. They can run all the way until all 4 tires are off that red and white curbing before they get any sort of infraction. So you taking good advantage of the track width there.
Got Jason Green here looking like it's gonna let him set this lap, which I don't think is the case. Randall, unless I'm wrong, yep, looks like he might be pulling off here. He is. Qualifying has now ended, and we will get to the grid momentarily. Got Stevie Ray here in the chat while we're waiting for the grid to come up here saying, greetings all. Not making the race today. That's unfortunate, Stevie, but glad to see you at least in the chat at the moment. Got smaller field today, Stevie, but it still should be a good one. Still waiting on the grid to come up, guys. I apologize for this. Just taking a little bit longer than it normally does. And here we go. These are the results. Grid should be coming up very, very soon. But while we're waiting on that, Randall, turn 1. What's your prediction here?
Chaos and maybe even pain for some of these drivers. It's a very wide track at entry, and we're going to see a lot of slipstreaming on the start. And speaking of that, we have on the pole with a 154.336 James Barry in that number 100 insert name e-racing team entry, starting alongside Soren Garrett's in P2. Behind them, the Masters lockout with Jörg Manny and Antonio Reese. Starting P5, Megan Overstreet. Expect to see her make some moves up and challenge for this win. Starting next to Jason Green in that number 160 entry. Michael McConnell is going to come P7 alongside Julian Ditchburn. And then on your Spec 2 pole is going to be David Foy, who stands to make a lot of points up in that Spec 2 championship with a good finish here today, starting alongside Jesus Rodriguez. In P11, we saw there at the end of qualifying, setting a good time, Kevin Adrian starting next to Joshua Wilkie. P13 is going to be the Masters of Jim Brewster, starting next to P14, Bill Walker in that 319 entry. Brad Cathcart coming in 15th with Dana Bowes in 16th. 17th, Paul Jackson starting next to Gary Walbot. And we see Anthony Hay in P19 and did not set a time in quali. Not sure if he will take to the grid or not.
Well, hopefully he does, and if he hasn't, he better, because they are going green, and it looks like, or I guess rolling off, and it doesn't look like Anthony Hay did set a lap. He is still sitting in the pits at the moment. But Soren Garrett's up here, P2, with James Barry on the front row. Like you mentioned, Randall, look out for Jörg Manny and Antonio Reese, especially into turn 1. Could get a little bit hairy, and never, ever count out Megan Overstreet or Jason Green. They have been racing each other, battling for quite a while, almost every race we've covered. Randall, I'll give it over to you.
We see the pace car has already entered pit lane as the pack is under the control of the leader, led by James Barry. And he's going to go pretty early here, so we're going to see a lot of slipstreaming. Expect to see that inside line be the one making most of the moves as they come to turn 1. Right now, everything's looking pretty tame. A nice big gap between Jörg Manny and Megan Overstreet, so she wasn't able to take as much advantage on that start as they pile into turn 1. We see they are two abreast, but there's not really much actual side-by-side until we get back towards the back of the field, and everybody's really sorting themselves out. We have a clean turn 1, so not as racy as I expected, as the cars now start to file line astern, and gonna have a nice clean first lap here, it looks like, so far, as James Barry leads the way up the hill. We have a bit of a battle back here around 10th place with Kevin Adrian. Looks like he's struggling a little bit and going to lose a couple spots.
Doing okay, though. Everybody seems to be holding it together just fine at the moment. But with that being said, we've got a couple drivers that have gained 2 positions, and those names are Joshua Wilkie and Jim Brewster, and Jörg Manny got one off the start as well. Randall, we kind of saw, you said they were starting 2 by 2. Jörg went from 3rd, 2nd. Now sitting right behind James Barry, which is exactly where he wants to be. Having a car in between him and Antonio Reese is probably not a bad thing for him.
Absolutely not, and he's going to look to track down James Barry and try not to let him run away and stay within that slipstream range. Right now, kind of at the tail end of that slipstream, so he's going to need a couple good corners to close that gap up a little bit if he's going to have any hopes to challenge for the lead.
Yep, he absolutely will, but this, again, is a 40-minute race. We're about a minute and a half into it. Still have plenty of time to go. Everybody, like you said, line of stern. Kevin Adrian had a bit of an off-track, a bit of an issue there on lap 1, but everybody looks like they've kept the pointy part forward, even though I can't really say that because both sides of the car are pointy in a Formula Ford. So I'm going to stop trying to be punny and let you talk for a minute.
Right now, the big losers in this overall is, oh, actually, we've seen Jesus Rodriguez drop down the order. We'll see if there was an issue with Jesus Rodriguez as they coming through the penultimate corner here. He manages to get around somebody, or somebody gets around him, and then they're going too wide through the final corner, and just a little bit of contact as he's helped around and escorted to the tire barrier. Not going to be a happy driver there in the form of Rodriguez. He's already taken to the pit lane, and we're going to see if he rejoins this race or not.
That is unfortunate for Jesus, but don't look now because Jorgmani has pulled that gap in. Slipstream really starting to become a thing now, down to about 0.3 of a second. He was almost out of slipstream range there, Randall, right at the beginning of the race. He got back to about a second, but he was able to claw that back. And now, here we go. And let's talk about this for 1 second here, Randall. Fuel saving while you're sitting behind James Berry. Is that something you want to do, or are you going for the pass here?
Absolutely, you're going for the pass here. The closer you stay, the fuel management's going to be a little bit easier because of the slipstream. So Jorgmani can save fuel by being faster here and just being closer to James Berry and applying a little bit of pressure. We saw in qualifying that Jorg was a little bit slower in Sector 1 and a little bit faster in Sector 3, but massively slower in Sector 2. Now with the slipstream benefit, he should be faster in Sector 1 as well, which was why he was able to close that gap up. But we see he keeps running wide there at turn 11. So that's going to rack up some incident points and ruin his chances to get any bonus points on the Clean Driver Award and possibly put him in a position where he's going to be worried about getting a penalty later in the race.
Yep, absolutely, but don't have to worry about that quite yet. And that I have noticed that, though, there are a few spots on this track. Track limits around here are not very forgiving. They're pretty steadfast on that white line being track limits around here.
Basically, on any of the exit curbings, if you get all 4 tires beyond the red and white curbing, you're going to be getting an off track. And if you don't bring the car back onto the curbing by the time it ends, you will get a slowdown.
Oh, wow.
So right now, none of these drivers really under threat of getting a slowdown, but we do see them getting a few off tracks here and there in some of the higher speed corners.
Yep, absolutely. Looking back here, seeing if we can find a driver that we haven't talked about yet. Let's talk about this one, Megan Overstreet in her purple vehicle. Up here in 4th place right now. She's gained a position, which is good. Jason Green looks like he is battling back there. There's about a 4-car battle back behind Megan between Jason, Antonio, Michael McConnell, and Julian Ditchburn. And then moving quite a bit further back, we got another pack of cars, about 6 cars. Jim Brewster, David Foy, Joshua Wilkie, Bill Walker, Kevin Adrian. Brad Cathcart is actually hanging on to the back of them as well. And then you've got Dana Bowes, Paul Jackson, and poor Jesus Rodriguez just kind of running around by himself right now due to that early incident. But really, yeah, actually pretty far back. It's unfortunate for Jesus, but at least he's still out driving, Randall.
He has rejoined the race. We've seen Gary Wobolt has also taken a tow. So an incident with Wobolt now putting him a lap down and still waiting on service in pit lane. James Berry's opened up this lead a little bit and is getting to that 1 second mark, getting very close to that 1 second mark. Will he be able to pull away a little bit and break that slipstream? We're going to take a look at what happened with Gary Wobolt and that 902 car. So he's coming up in turn 4, going to possibly get him. Yes, once you get off past that red and white curve, there's a bit of a dip, and it will definitely cause it. We saw that happen to Antonio Reese in the closing stages of qualifying, and it happened to Gary here, and a little bit of video game physics going on there as he puts the car in reverse and eventually takes the tow.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But speaking of unfortunate if you're Jorgmani, or pretty fortunate if you're Soren Garrett, Soren is right back up on the back of you right now. And you think he probably wants to get this move done as quick as possible because James Berry is driving away from them at a rate of, well, I mean, in these cars, the rate of is not that much. See what I did there? But yes, they're still driving away. Yeah, James Berry now 1.1 seconds. That gap has really ballooned in the last lap and a half or so. Yeah, Soren Garrett's got to get the move done. He got to get it done now.
And we can see the gap kind of shrinks down on corner entry a bit, and then once Jörg Manny gets to the apex, we see it really starts to open up. So it looks like Barry able to go a little bit slower in, sacrifice a little bit of entry speed in order to get back to that throttle earlier. And that's what it really is all about in this car. You want to maximize your on throttle time. So sometimes being a little slower on entry will make you be much faster at exit and then down the following straightaway.
Got a battle here between Julian Ditchburn and Michael McConnell. At the moment, Michael McConnell barely holding on to that. We saw it in the background. They were going through the S's. Was pretty close. They everybody held it together though. You know, Randall, I'm surprised we're not seeing this much passing.
Right now at this stage of the race, I think the drivers are a bit more patient. Making a move could cause you to lose slipstream to the cars ahead. So we might see some drivers that are being a little bit more cautious and a little bit more patient. But as we get closer to that 40-minute mark, expect to see that patience go away as we see one driver take to the pit lane. Antonio Reese going to be the first to come in for service. And I believe that he should be able to make it to the end of the race off of that stop. He may need to do a little bit of fuel saving, but coming in pretty early at the 8-minute mark.
We got a battle back here. Julian Ditchburn, Joshua Wilkie, David Foy, all very, very close at the moment. They were 3 wide going down the front stretch into T1. Now going through T1A. Yeah, pretty intense battle going on back here right now.
Anytime you see a group of cars coming down the front straightaway, it's almost always going to end up in a melee at the exit of turn 1 and all the way through turn 3. We saw it happen behind Megan Overstreet earlier a couple laps ago. We're seeing it happen now. Anytime you're going to have 3 or 4 or more cars together on that straightaway, that slipstream is going to just introduce quite a bit of chaos into the race for the first part of the lap.
Look at that interval now, Randall. We went away for about a lap, and in about a lap and a half, James Berry has put another second on second and third of Jörg and Soren. Soren still kind of stuck behind Jörg Monty right now. Don't know if this is his plan or what's going on, or if James Berry is just that fast.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Soren is probably being held up a little bit by Jörg, and James Berry really is that quick, especially in the middle sector of the track.
Now let's talk here real quickly. If Soren can save enough fuel, do you think he would be able to come into the pits? Obviously a later pit stop. Do you think he would be able to come into the pits and try to undercut James Berry? How close do you think he's got to be to make that work? You can see, yeah, you're getting very, very defensive right now, swerving back and forth, not wanting to get past.
Yeah, that defense is really going to cost them both time. I don't know if I'm certain if I fall for that weaving bait. Right now we're going to see he's going to take that inside line, makes the send up the inside on Manny. Gets the pass done initially, but Manny was able to use the track width a bit more, is going to have more momentum coming off the corner. Soren was a little bit tight on exit there. He left a little bit too much space for Jörg Manny to get that run. And then now is going to be stuck alongside him as they go all the way through turn 3. They're going to be side by side in the run up to 4. This could get very spicy very quickly.
It's going to, and we know Jörg, we've been watching him for the past few weeks. He will not concede a position as contact's made, but they stay together, still battling. Oh no, and there's the contact.
Yeah, a little bit of contact at the top of the hill. Søren Gerrits fortunate to keep it on track at that exit curbing for turn 4, but then they come together again a little bit, it looks like, at turn 5, and Søren comes off the worst for it. We're going to look at it again, the run up to turn 4. The 2 cars alongside, we're going to go on board with Gerrits here. This is the real danger moment when he gets contacted here and gets outside of that curb, manages to keep it straight, and then no, not even a little bit of contact there. Possibly the contact causing a little bit of excess heat buildup, being offline there on the inside of turn 5, possibly some marbles and dirt built up there, causing him to lose traction and go around. So not the outcome Gerrits was hoping for. Now Manny on an island alone in P2.
Look at what's happened. As you mentioned, Antonio Race with a very, very early pit stop, which might end up in his favor. So never mind what I was about to say is Jörg is, speaking of being on an island in his own, yeah, Jörg is, to 10th place. Jim Brewster is the next Masters driver, but like you said, Antonio Race has pitted already. Pitted on lap 4, which is, wow, man, that is very early.
Very, very early. We're looking at a 21 lap race. We're currently serving lap 7, and the undercut is normally powerful here, but it's normally powerful because of the tire wear. So taking tires and getting out earlier is normally the move that will let you jump people on pit strategy. These drivers not taking tires on their fuel stops. So the undercut not as powerful. There's still a little bit of effect there because of the nature of the front straightaway, but we're not going to see any big overtakes because of an undercut. It would have to be a very close race already for an undercut to work. You see Megan Overstreet running wide there through turn 5, manages to keep it under control, but loses a lot of time, and now is going to be under pressure from Jason Green.
I don't know what it is about these two drivers, Megan Overstreet and Jason Green, always tend to wind up together on the track, and it makes for some of the best battles as Soren Garrett, it looks like, has gone around.
And see what happened with Soren Garrett's here.
Same issue.
No, this is a replay of the earlier incident, so just rubbing a little bit more salt in this wound. We'll get away from that and get back to live pictures.
Yep, unfortunate. Sorry guys. Sorry about that. Anyways,
Megan.
speaking of Megan and Jason, these drivers tend to find each other on track more times than not.
It always seems to happen in league racing. There's always that driver or a couple drivers that are always right around your pace, and they may be faster in some sections and slower in some sections, and it always leads to really interesting racing. And in my experience, those are the best races. Whenever you come across that driver that you're always battling with, you've built up a lot of trust, you can race each other hard, and it ends up building long-term friendships. So I would expect to see these two maybe even adopt a team name together in the future seasons if they're going to continue racing together like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jason does need a team name. At least he doesn't have one on SDK at the moment. Michelle Lindsay and Megan and Jason Green are both smart drivers and will work together to close on P2. Well, that's a long way to close in, Michelle, but if anybody can do it, we know how fast Megan can be. Her one-lap pace, Randall, is probably way up there. Maybe one of the faster drivers over one lap here, but just got to keep it a little bit more consistent than she has been the past couple weeks.
And we've seen her do a lot of recovery runs where she'll have a mistake early, then charge her way through the field. So I really wonder, without having a rabbit in front of her to chase, if she's able to get the same amount of pace with clean air. It might actually be faster to let Jason around. We'll see. She is a very fast driver, very capable. They're both very smart, as Michelle is saying. So I expect them to work together as much as they can. But right now, that gap is pretty large and not really getting smaller very quickly.
Now, let's talk real quick about maybe doing the good old switcheroo, or whatever you want to call it, where they do kind of swap positions back and forth to gain time and try not to lose time in the slipstream. In my experience, Randall, it doesn't seem to quite work that well, because the driver in front's got a lift, and then the driver behind really is just swapping positions with where the driver in front was. You're really not gaining much time doing that.
In a car like this, playing the switcheroo game is not always the fastest, as we see a driver ducking off into the pits, and that looks like it is Soren Garrett's coming in, going to take the fuel now. Let his tires cool off a little bit too. There's a little bit of an added benefit of just letting a little bit of temperature bleed off by coming into the pit lane. So struggling after that incident with Jörg Manny, now coming into first service, and we'll see where he comes out. Right now, we've only seen a few. He's only the third to stop for service, and everybody else that has come in due to an incident or taking a tow.
And look at this gap now that James Berry has on Jörg Manny. Even after the battle with Søren, Jörg has lost another 1.5 seconds to James Berry. James Berry just out there on cruise control at the moment.
Absolutely. He's been quick all day. Now that he doesn't have any pressure, he can just focus on hitting his marks and basically clicking off qualifying pace laps for the entire race. So he's going to be very difficult to catch.
Yeah, absolutely will be. But again, Megan Overstreet doing what she can, but the gap is still sitting right around 3 seconds. Jason Green just hovering back there waiting, and then this group of cars back here, Well, not anymore because Soren had come into the pits, but Michael McConnell and Julian Ditchburn, they've been at it since the beginning of this race. It looks like they're racing, but they are being extremely respectful. But, I mean, Julian is a Canadian, so I can understand that.
Always a nice guy, Julian Ditchburn. Right now, not really doing much to get around Michael McConnell, but keeping the pressure on, staying nice and close to benefit from that slipstream. So probably going to save a bit of fuel, maybe going to jump him on the pit lane. This is where you could see an undercut possibly come into play, or just a shorter stop if they come in at the same time. So I expect after the pit stop, we'll see Ditchburn ahead of McConnell, unless McConnell can open up a little bit of a gap here.
Now, Randall, let's talk strategy again real quick. So, Michael McConnell, obviously, in the lead right now with Julian Ditchburn behind him. Julian has been saving a little bit. Do you want to benefit from that fuel savings by coming in on the same lap as Julian? Will you lose that fuel gap, that fuel delta that you've built up if you wait to come in? Because you could run another lap or two, obviously out of the slipstream of Michael McConnell. What's the best way to go about doing what you can, doing the best way to get that fuel save strategy to work for you?
The best way to get the fuel safe strategy to work for you is to become Karnak the Magnificent and predict when Michael McConnell's going to pit, and then pit one lap before him.
Got it.
That way you maximize your savings. You don't have to worry about contesting the pit exit with the other driver. If you come in on the same lap, you're really maximizing the strategy, but you have to worry about the other driver short pitting and having this and slowing you down at pit exit in the run up to turn 1.
Yep, absolutely. And looks like Joshua Wilkie may have just had a bit of an off track there, but he kept it on the road enough, at least, with David Foy. I mean, these drivers, Julian Ditchburn, I mean, he is just so close. This is insane. And the pressure that McConnell must be feeling right now, and the fact that he is able to hold this car together as well as he has for, I mean, about half of the race now is pretty insane.
We've never really seen Michael McConnell in a gap or a safety bubble in any of these races, so he's used to racing with drivers in his mirror. Right now, Ditchburn hasn't really made any indication that he's interested in passing. So while you don't want to be lulled into complacency, right now, if you're McConnell, you're keeping an eye on that mirror, but you're not focusing too much on it. You're just trying to hit your marks, because as long as you hit your marks, you should have enough momentum off of any corner to really contest that position and fight back for it.
Yep, that is very true. And as you can see, James Berry just set the fastest lap of the 1:55.019. That is extremely fast, 4 tenths faster actually than Jurg Mani. So yeah, as the fuel's starting to come out of these cars, James Berry is just getting faster and faster and faster.
And it's going to continue to happen. He'll come in and take some fuel and be a little bit slower, but we'll see him just continue to be the fastest driver. He's found his rhythm. He's out there alone, so he doesn't have any distractions. He's not interested in going any slower because that would just break his rhythm. So right now, just setting off quality pace laps, lap after lap.
So we mentioned David Foy at the beginning of the broadcast, and great profile picture, by the way, David. The Canadian has a chance, really, to make up quite a bit of points, and we can pull up the points right now for the S2 class. And as you can see, Peter True, Jimmy Labotka, both not here today. There will be drop weeks, obviously. I know they've got a couple drop weeks, or maybe 3, Randall, but playing the points here right now with David Foy sitting in 7th position overall, it's quite a big haul of points for him.
It is a huge haul of points for him. He's going to close that gap and surpass Peter True pretty easily with a good finish here today. And furthermore, we don't know how they calculate their drops, so it may or may not reflect next week, but this is going to be a big windfall for Dave Foy, and the windfall will be bigger and bigger the better his finish is.
Absolutely. So you know he's going to be pushing as much as he can, and with these two really not battling, this gap has stayed kind of the same. Now it looks like David has closed it down just a little bit, but I just don't, it's going to be hard to tell. We got to keep an eye on this interval between Julian Ditchburn and David Foy at the moment, but it looks like David is actually starting to really put the pressure on, or turn on the afterburner on these Formula Fords. Stevie just said that 3 drops, best 9 races count. So obviously that will be at least one drop for the 2 leaders in S2 class. But yeah, David Foy doing everything he can and everything he has to right now. I'm sure he probably wants to be a little further up, but doing everything he can right now, sitting in the top 10.
And more importantly, while the 2 leaders in S2 are going to get drop weeks this week, what we have this week for S2 and what David Foy is really going to benefit from is we have a small field, and with a small field, you're going to have fewer faster drivers in front of you. So P7 overall, possibly P6 or even P5 if he can put something together here, is a massive gain and probably not what an S2 driver could expect on a normal week with a normal size grid.
Absolutely. We got Soren Garrett's right around the outside of Paul Jackson. I think Paul Jackson knew immediately. He said, I am not going to fight that one, because to watch a Formula 4, and I'm looking at Michelle's message about Formula Vs, to watch a Formula 4 drive around the outside of another car like that at the Apex is quite impressive. So I do believe Paul Jackson just said, go on ahead, Soren. I know you're faster.
Yeah, Soren was the second quickest driver on track before his incident with Jürgen Manning, and is continuing to show that pace after coming in for a pit stop. So no surprise he was able to make short work there. We see Kevin Adrian coming up the inside on the chicane and going to make that move and get it done, and he gets around as well. So right now he's making his way up the grid on the leaderboard.
Absolutely he is, and back to the lead. I mean, this is just one of those things where you want to cover a race, but I mean, it's really tough when James Berry is now 8.7 seconds ahead. Randall, 54.864, almost a second faster, about 0.6 of a second faster than Jürgen Manning. I mean, he is flat out flying.
If this pace continues, we're going to have to calculate the winning distance on a calendar instead of a stopwatch. Right now, James Berry, the class of the field, and in all honesty, he's been the class of this series the past few weeks.
Yeah, he really is. This is just unbelievable stuff from James Berry at the moment. 9 seconds. Stevie, you got to get some recruiting here to get somebody up here that can run with James Berry, because right now he is just absolutely flying away. Megan Overstreet now trying to catch Jürgen Manning, but sitting in 3rd place at the moment, doing just fine. Jürg is, I mean, we're saying how fast James is, but Jürg is able to hold that interval pretty steady. Hasn't moved around that 4-second mark since we last looked. James Berry or Megan Overstreet and Jason Green still nose to tail though.
Yeah, so far Jürg just a little bit faster than Megan, and James Berry a lot faster than everybody. So we're seeing those gaps just get bigger and bigger every lap. And only whenever you see drivers that are really close together is a gap staying pretty static. Anytime that there's a big space that breaks the slipstream, we just see the gaps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking here right now, you can see David Foy is still trying to close that gap in. Is still sitting around that 1.1 second mark. So all of these drivers really running almost identical lap times. Joshua Wilkie sitting behind David right now. Kind of wonder when Joshua's going to make his move, because he's definitely close enough to make it, and we know Joshua Wilkie can be a quick driver in that S2 class.
Absolutely, he can be, and he could be challenging it for the S2 win here. He might try to get it done on pit lane right now. Not really close enough to make a move, but definitely benefiting from the slipstream primarily on that start-finish straight, as we see Bill Walker dive into the pit lane. We haven't seen any drivers take to the pits the last few laps, but now we're starting to see them trickle in. Bill Walker will be the first of the rest of the drivers to come in.
Yep, absolutely. Back here to the little battle we've got going on right now. We've got David Foy and Julian Ditchburn, nose to tail, and then you go up a couple drivers. You got Michael McConnell and Jason Green, and I don't think this gap has gone over 0.2 of a second the whole race.
No, this gap has been here the whole time. We see Ditchburn staying behind McConnell, holding station where he's been for quite a bit of time now, as we get just past the 26-minute mark. So we have just over 14 minutes left in this race. We'll see what happens on the pit strategy with these two. Ditchburn likely going to come in the next couple laps or react to McConnell coming into the pits and come with him. And maybe see the same out of David Foy. We may see David Foy follow either one of these drivers into the pit lane and hope to have a slower or a quicker stop and try to get some track position off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking here right now, you can see cars are pretty spread out right now, and that tends to happen with all the pit stops and the pit cycles. Looking at James Berry right now, you can see James Berry has almost half of a front stretch, a little bit more than half of a front stretch lead right now on Jürgen Money. But, you know, Randall, the track is so big here, there hasn't, when you get to a lap car, if you get to a lap car, it's pretty easy to get around them, but you don't really have to encounter that much lap traffic.
And any lap traffic that he encounters is likely to benefit him more than it is going to be, more than it will hurt him, just given the nature of the slipstream on a track like this. He'll gain some sort of benefit, and it won't take him very long to get around a slower driver. And since these cars are such low speed, he'll have plenty of time to map out his attack on any lap driver, so he'll be able to catch them in a good spot and not come on them in a place that's really going to bind him up. But even if he gets bound up, he's got 10.5 seconds in hand, and that's effectively an hour in these cars.
We got Stevie Ray in there, maybe doing a bit of a shameless plug. Guys, stay tuned on that, by the way. It sounds like we got something in the works for with Slow Motion Broadcasting, Ray Esports, Formula Ford, Spec, all of the SRFs, the Formula Vs. Just stay tuned for that one. I think here in a couple weeks we might get a little bit more information out for you guys and you drivers. But Stevie's got something in the works that I think is going to be great for the league, great for the broadcast, great for everybody involved in the races as well. So yeah, stay tuned on that. Yeah, but Stevie asking, where's the racing line, or what's the racing line? Well, Stevie, I don't know if we're talking about the podcast. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Or we're talking about the racing line on the track, but spelled race, R-A-C-I-N-G. Talking about the racing line on the track. So yeah, guys, stay tuned for the podcast. The racing line probably coming at you first Tuesday of August if we can make it happen. But back on to the racing here. Jason Green has just come into the pits.
So we may see an undercut happen here. He was very close to Megan Overstreet throughout the last few laps. So if there's going to be an undercut, this could be when it happens. Right now, we'll see how much fuel Jason Green's managed to save running in that slipstream behind Megan and possibly get a faster stop and perform that undercut. When Megan pits ultimately comes back out onto the track, Jason Green will be coming at a rate of knots faster than Megan Overstreet. That's where the undercut will really show itself. But right now, it's dependent on that pits time.
I was wondering when you'd start to pull some of the puns out of your pun closet there, Randall. I'm surprised it took you 30 minutes into the first race of the day to try to get one out. But yeah, James Berry again, Jürgen Money, Megan Overstreet running 1, 2, 3. Julian Ditchburn, David Foy actually. Really, David up here in 5th place and is catching Julian now that there's no help in front of him. David now within that 1 second mark.
We saw McConnell has come into the pits on lap 14. So a couple laps ago, he came into the pits and got service first. So not what I expected to see from Ditchburn. Now trying to do the overcut. I think it's not going to work out for him. And it definitely will not work out for him if David Foy is able to get up there and make him start defending that position.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, you're probably hoping, if you're David Foy, you're hoping that Ditchburn decides to come into the pits this lap. And Randall, what do? You're still right now, you're not within that range where you're going to start losing time. You're not battling, still sitting in that slipstream range. If you can gain about 5/6 of a second, that's really going to help you before you come into the pit stops.
Yeah, if Ditchburn pits, I would follow him in if I'm in Foy's seat. You have enough of a gap that you won't really be contesting, but you could definitely close the distance as we see both of them coming to the pits. David Foy follows him right in.
Now, you got to be careful here on pit entry. Look at how much quicker Foy is, able to get right up to the back of Ditchburn. You wonder if this is a weird little tactic. Ditchburn going very, very slow on pit entry.
I would not say that was a defensive tactic. I think David Foy just attacked the entry a lot more and managed to make up a lot of space. So we're going to see him possibly join Ditchburn and McConnell after they come out of the pits.
Oh,
we see
no,
Jürgen
they
Manny
both
has
missed
taken
him.
service. They both missed. We see Jürgen Manny has taken service. Megan Overstreet coming out as well. Maybe close a little bit of that gap on Manny after that pit stop, and going to come out in front of Antonio Reese.
Yep.
Antonio Reese has not. He pit early on lap 4, so he's trying to pull off a big undercut. Gonna be right there at the end of the slipstream distance. And we saw Jason Green. He's even further back, so his undercut did not work out. The undercut not as powerful here. Still need a quick pit stop to make it work.
Looking for David Foy here. As you can see, he's come back out onto the track. A huge gap away from Julian Ditchburn. Probably, excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Maybe, Randall, I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah, we saw Ditchburn did not attack that pit entry, but he spent a lot of time in this race behind McConnell, so was able to save a lot of fuel. Right now, though, he lost. Not only did he lose the race with McConnell, Søren Gerrits has made up that spot between them. So he's given up a spot on that pit cycle. Garrett's really showing some pace.
Absolutely, and Michelle did say Green is always fast in and fast out of the pit. Should be interesting. Well, you may have jinxed him there because he has lost quite a bit of time to Megan Overstreet, Michelle. Now the question is, did Megan get enough fuel into the car? That is going to be the big question here. We've seen a couple issues the past couple weeks, people trying to underfuel the car and just not making it home.
It's easy to try to game these pit stops the way that the fuel's added in increments that are much larger than what you actually need. You can cut fuel while it's refueling and try to get away. Sometimes you cut it just a little bit too early and find yourself having to save or running out of fuel coming through the final few corners on the last lap.
Yeah, so looking here right now at David Foy, looking at his pit time, it was about 15.58 seconds. His pit lane time was 48. Julian's was 50 with 19.47 seconds in the pits, which is crazy to me that Julian was able to get out so far ahead of David, Randall. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, just a slower pit stop, and we saw that Julian did not attack the entry. David Foy was able to attack that entry and gain a lot of time, but David Foy was running without a slipstream for most of the race, so he was not able to save any fuel. So just having to stay stationary for longer to put fuel into the car, and possibly didn't cut it off. Julian could have cut it off and saved another second or so to get out of there earlier.
Yep, that's true. That is very true. I didn't think about that. But yeah, looking at some of these pit lane times, James Berry 15 or 45 seconds total in the pits. Megan Overstreet 42. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this with Jason Green 43 seconds into the pits. So let's keep an eye and hope that Megan was able, saying she's good on fuel by about half a lap from Russell Telker. We'll have to see how that is, see if the slipstream helped her out at all, but I don't think it really mattered because Megan was in the lead, so it wasn't calculating, slipstream laps for her fuel calculator, Randall. She might actually be in the green and good to go till the end, and maybe she did just gain that pit stop exactly, extremely perfect.
Yeah, there's a lot of math that goes on in fuel calculations and how much fuel you actually need. What I tend to do is look at a qualifying lap or a full out lap without slipstream to see how much fuel I use on that and use that as my benchmark for how much fuel I need, because I don't know if I'll have slipstream or if I'll need to fight with somebody. So I may not use that slipstream usage. You see Antonio Reese closing in on Megan Overstreet. Now, let's talk about Antonio for a second. He had the fastest of all in the pit lane. His total pit stop time was 11.83 seconds, which is about a second faster than anybody else and a handful of seconds faster than most drivers. He came in extremely early. So unless he's been fuel saving this whole time, he could very well be in trouble at the end of this race.
I think he might be, and Stevie just said that as well in the comments. I think Antonio stopped too early. We will see. Yeah, it's going to be, you wonder if Antonio is going to try to fight Megan, or we might see him hanging out behind Megan and just taking these points, hopefully lifting, coasting. But if you're going to do it, I think it's probably too late to start lifting and coasting now, Randall. You probably would have had to start doing that about the time you exited the pits on lap 4.
Yeah, not many laps to go, not much time left on the clock. So we'll see this shake out here in the next couple minutes. He's looking very racy right now, though. Megan runs a little bit wide at the apex, and he closes that gap up. So right now, he's made his bed, and he is planning on lying in it, and he's got the bit in his teeth and is trying to run down Megan Overstreet. So obviously, he feels like he has enough to make it to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see here. We'll be on board with Reese. Let's take a listen here, see if he's doing much lifting and coasting, but it doesn't sound like he is.
It doesn't sound like he gets out of the throttle very early there at all. We'll see if he does it on the next corner. This will be a good fuel-saving opportunity. And no, he is on it all the way until the braking point. So he does not look to be saving fuel. He's saving a little bit just by virtue of the slipstream and the way that iRacing calculates fuel usage. By being a little bit faster, you save a little bit of fuel. But I think he's going to be in trouble here unless he is absolutely just nailed the fuel strategy.
I mean, to have nailed it that well, being the first driver in and being almost a second faster than everybody else in your box, you're going to have to. I mean, you've got a lot of drivers that have done this for quite a while. I don't think it's going to happen, but Antonio, I hope you prove me wrong, sir. Trying to track down Megan Overstreet, hasn't really found a way around her yet. Megan's still running her own race, and to be honest, Randall, she's in a great spot. Even if she gets passed by Antonio Reese, I don't think it's going to hurt her feelings that much. Her main rival is Jason Green at the moment, and Jason is actually back there behind Antonio, and he's way back behind these drivers.
So I disagree, actually. I think Megan will be extremely interested in keeping the spot away from Antonio Reese because the way the points pay out, the gaps between drivers behind you are bigger as you get closer to the sharp end of the field. So she's in a position to gain more points than she would if they were further back in the field. So she'll be very interested in defending that position. We see Michael McConnell now has Soren Garrett's in his sights. This time he is following instead of leading in a pair. So we'll see if he can do anything with Soren here in the closing stages.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, Michaels always seems to be in a battle. Joshua Wilkie looks like just got past Data Bose. Let's see what other battles do we have on track. Just back to Megan now and Antonio. Got Michael and Soren. Let's take a look here at David Foy, still sitting for S2 class. Back there in 9th place, though. Looks like he's lost quite a bit of time as well to Julian Ditchburn.
We see James Berry is coming around the final corner to take the white flag. Yeah, David lost a couple spots because of Soren Garrett's making a recovery drive and Antonio Reese pulling off a huge undercut on the entire field, coming in super early. So that 7th place position was a bit of an illusion, and now that everybody's pit, we see that his true pace is 9th.
Well, Antonio, I think he might gain a position here because Antonio did not come into the pits, Randall. This is going to be very crucial for Antonio. When will it start sputtering? Will it start sputtering? All of these are questions that are about to get answered, as it looks like he is still trying to maybe think about a move on Megan, or maybe he's just trying to stay close enough. No, he is definitely thinking about making a move here.
As early as he came in, we could see his car start to sputter on fuel as early as sector 2, so it turns 4 and 5 even could see some performance fall off, and he won't be able to finish if it starts there. If he's managed to save some fuel and has enough to get to the end, we might see it sputter in the last couple of corners, and if that's the case, he'll definitely make it across the line, and he has enough of a gap that he might finish ahead of Jason still even, but we'll have to keep a very close eye and ear on Antonio for this last lap. You see, looking to the inside, he's getting a decent run. He's staying right there on Megan's tailpipe. She's not able to pull away. They enter the chicane. He gets a much tighter run through the chicane. He's going to have much more momentum coming out of it, closing the distance. We're going to definitely see a move going into turn 11, most likely, possibly turn 12, and a run through the final 2 corners.
Yep, and here we go. Right now, he's going to get a big slipstream. You can see the tail just waggling around a little bit. Megan doing everything she can, keeping it on the track. But here comes Antonio. Is he going to make a move down to the inside? No, he's going to stay behind her for this corner. He's got a couple more. Now T12 right here, T12A going into T13. Thinking about it around the outside, maybe going for an over-under.
He gets a good run off the corner, has closed that gap a little bit. Megan Overstreet taking a defensive line, cutting off his run. He's going to have to get to the throttle much sooner than she does. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, and Megan's going to win that race to the line for P3. We already saw James Berry cross the line and take the win. Jörg Manning takes the win in Masters and P2 overall. Megan Overstreet going to come in 3rd with Antonio Reese in 4th. Jason Green coming home 5th. Soren Garrett's recovering up to 6th place. We think he may have been able to take that second step of the podium. Michael McConnell does not win that race with him, comes home in 7th place. Julian Ditchburn going to come home ahead of your S2 winner in David Foy.
Kevin Adrian coming home in 10th position with Brad Cathcart in 11th and 12th. You've got Jim Brewster Joshua Wilkie rounding the final corner as we speak. All S2 drivers back here with Wilkie, Bose, and Bill Walker rounding out your field for the evening. And then the 249 car of Paul Jackson, which he has not finished. Okay, well, we're going to ride around with Paul Jackson here for just a little while. Paul, you're going to get some airtime because you were the last driver to cross the line.
He still has a few corners to go, 3 corners to go to be exact. We did not see James Berry take the checkered flag because the winning moment was actually in the final corner on the pace lap as he came off the exit of that final corner and hit the gas pedal. It was all James Berry after then. He never really felt any challenge. He had Jörg Manny behind him for a couple laps, but no real pressure, and was able to quickly open up a gap. Then we saw Jörg Manny and Søren Gerrits have a bit of a fight, and he checked out and was down the road by then.
Absolutely, and now we're going to go ahead and wait for these points to come up, these results, and there they are with James Berry winning by 12.4 seconds. Jörg Manny holding on to second place. After that battle with Søren, really didn't have anybody trying to battle him that hard, with Megan Overstreet coming home in third place, second in S1. Oh yeah, Jörg, by the way, winning the Masters Division. Antonio Reese with maybe one of the craziest fuel strats I've ever seen, coming in on lap 4, able to bring it home P4, second overall, or second in class in Masters. Jason Green in 5th, Søren Gerrits 6th, Michael McConnell in 7th, with Julian Ditchburn coming home 8th. David Foy, your winner of the S2 class, and gaining a whole bunch of points on the drivers ahead of him, as both of those drivers did not participate in the race today. Kevin Adrian in 10th, Brad Cathcart in 11th with Jim Brewster, Joshua Wilkie, Dana Bowes, and Bill Walker rounding out your top 15. Paul Jackson, Jesus Rodriguez, and Gary Woolbolt in 16th, 17th, and 18th respectively. And that is it, with Anthony Hay not taking part today. Well, you know what I mean. He took part, but he never took to the grid. So that being said, Randall, I think we got some drivers here. Looks like we've got a one very, very fast and very, very lonely James Berry. I'll let you have him, Randall.
James, we were waiting what seemed like an hour after you crossed the start-finish line for P2 to come in behind you. How were you so much faster than everybody today?
Well, all I can say is, I'm actually quite new to this car, but I've been using Garage 61 to look at telemetry from other drivers, just figuring out how you can drive this car to its maximum potential. And I was just saying to Megan, because she drives with right foot brakes, so she can only use obviously 1 foot at a time on the brake or throttle. And with this car, the way that I've been driving it this week, I've been super active on both pedals, using the throttle to push the car around the corners. And I feel like you can be super fast with that. So just, a little bit of practice. And I love the natural feeling of this car, like the force feedback. You get so much through the wheel. So it's been super natural to drive. And it's just about studying other drivers, how they drive. And that's what I can say.
Well, maybe some of the drivers will start studying you after your dominating win here today. The only real pressure action we saw around you was at the start. You went very early out of the final corner. That would have, probably given quite a big slipstream to some of the drivers behind you and put you under threat, even though you didn't really feel any pressure. What was your thinking going into that start?
Yeah, the thing is, I was actually looking at the rule book before the race because I knew that I wanted to do an early start potentially, as you have that corner, and I would hopefully catch the guys out behind me, because I know it's such a long run to turn 1. I don't want that slipstream. So I was just looking at the rule book and seeing, it says, you have to be on the front straight. So I was thinking, well, I don't want to push the rules too much, but I want to go as early as I can. So as soon as I was on that front straight, I just went for it.
Well, it worked out for you. Is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out before we let you go celebrate?
Just thank you to you guys for the broadcast. It's always good to watch broadcast back. So thank you guys.
And that was your winner, James Berry, overall winning by 12 and some seconds. Adam, have you managed to find anybody while I was talking to James?
Excuse me, I had my mic muted. I'm walking through the pits here, and I came up on a very, very happy Jörg Manny coming home in second place overall, first place in the Masters. Jörg, it was a very, very good race, but it wasn't without some battling. You had a great battle going on there with Søren Gerrits. So kind of walk us through the race. Once you got through Søren Gerrits, or Søren Gerrits got through himself, it looked like it was just a pretty lonely race out there for you.
Yeah, I knew Barry's going to be very, very quick. I knew that because from the practice sessions, and I just tried to stay in his draft, but then Søren attacked me all the time, and that's where you're going to lose draft in this car. And that was done very quickly, at least. I think in one lap we lost the draft, but then he tried to, I think it was turn 4, he tried to attack me on the outside there, and yeah, I think it's impossible to pass anybody there, and I just kept my line, and that's where you spun out, I think. Yeah. And after that, I just tried to keep my pace. That was all I tried to do.
You did a great job holding your line. It was a great battle between you and Søren. I know you didn't want to lose that gap to James Barry, but at the same time, we always like to see good racing. So great racing from you this afternoon, Jörg. Yeah, P2, you're starting to gain some time or gain some ground here on Antonio Reese right now for the points. You're doing a great job at the moment, starting to close in that championship. You think you can get him by the end?
I don't know. We practice together, we laugh together, we have fun together. Let's see. If he wins, I'm really happy for him if he's gonna win. And I possibly think it's the same way, opposite way.
Oh, come on, Jörg. You gotta be gritty. You gotta come on, just tell him, no, I want that championship. But no.
Everybody wants to win.
Exactly.
But I really like Antonio, and we are friends actually. And
well,
I don't.
Go ahead.
If he doesn't make it, then I'm really happy for him. If I'm gonna make it, I'm happy for myself as well.
Absolutely, Jörg. Well, thank you so much again for another great race, great display of driving from yourself. Anybody you'd like to thank and shout out before we let you go?
Yeah, you guys. I think I was trying to watch them last week, but I think you guys had slight little technical issues.
Yeah, there were a few.
Yeah, I hope you didn't were involved in the CrowdStrike issue that we had this weekend.
No, well, I'm telling you what, all of these races that we've been putting on for you guys, it just seems like every week there's something going wrong. This week, I don't have air conditioning in my house, so it's super hot, and I'm just hoping my computer doesn't overheat, especially for the SRF race. So yeah, it's always something, Jörg, but it looks like we were able to get this one off without a hitch. So yeah, thank you so much for shouting us out.
Thank you as well. Thank you as well, Adam and Randall. Thanks a lot for broadcasting. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Jörg. That was Jörg, P2 overall, P1 in class. And it doesn't look like we've got David Foy here for S2, but Randall, I've been walking through the pits here, and I found she just got out of her very purple car in very amazing paint job. Randall, want to talk to Megan?
Megan Overstreet coming home at P3 today. We saw you locked in a couple battles with Jason Green and then later with Antonio Reese, the fuel wizard. How surprised were you to see Antonio there at the end of the race?
I was very surprised. I thought he was out of it when he pitted real early because I was like, usually in the race Formula Ford 1600, you want to run it as low fuel for as long as you can. And you're typically slower with a lot of fuel. So seeing him within 1 second of me after I got out of the pits with just barely enough fuel to get me to the finish line was like, how did he do that?
Well, early on in the race, we saw you came together with somebody that you seem to always be around, Jason Green, as you were trying to track down Jörg Manny. How worried were you about Jason getting around you and making a move?
Just a tiny bit. We were both in Discord on the Spec Racer 4 Discord, and we were both pushing as hard as we could, and it's very hard to pass here. So he was basically just going as hard as he could to stay within a half a second of me, I think. I don't think he was fuel saving at all, so it was a fun battle. I was just going as hard as I could to keep him just far enough back to where he had no room to make a move on me.
So in the first few races that we've covered this season, we've seen you make some mistakes early in races, and this time you didn't. And so you didn't have to make much of a recovery run. We saw maybe a couple of little incidents where you went wide at an apex, but no spins or anything. Tell us how much more comfortable you were in the car without having to do a recovery compared to what you've had to experience the past few races.
And the whole time I was just waiting for the spin to happen. I was like, all right, I've gone 3/4 of the way through the race. All right, haven't spun yet. Okay, we're 9/10, we got one lap. Okay, here's where it's going to happen.
Well, you managed to keep it pointing in the right direction for the entirety of this race. You brought it home a P3. Congratulations. Is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out before we let you go?
Yeah, thank y'all for doing the broadcast. Stevie Ray for putting the league on. SimMotion for sponsoring the league, and everybody that sponsors the individual races here and there. Everybody out there that's watching and my family, thank y'all so much.
Congratulations, and hopefully we talk to you next week or possibly later today in the Spec Racer Ford.
Fingers crossed.
That was your third place finisher, Megan Overstreet. And I'd also like to thank everybody in chat. We have Ray Esports, Stevie Ray there, Michelle Lynn, Russell Telkert, all in the chat today. Thank you so much for hanging on. And guys, if you're watching, don't forget to hit that like button.
Oh, yeah, another shameless plug there from the one, the only. Guys, this chat rate really does help get this broadcast out to more drivers. You need to, or to more people to watch this amazing series that Stevie Ray and the Weekend Warriors put on. So yes, please, please, please hit that like button. Let's get this out to as many people as we can. They deserve it. Great racing, great group of people that Stevie has put together and that they have put together themselves. Seem like they have a great, great time. But with that being said, we've got a few more streams coming up this evening. Spec Racer Ford, they're at Mid-Ohio, Randall. That is going to be a good race. Tonight at 8:10 p.m. Eastern Time, we are going to Spa, but we're not doing it in F1 cars. We're not even doing it in GT3 cars. No, guys, we are doing it in the asphalt street stock. Tune in. That should be a good one to watch. I've done a few laps there around Spa in the asphalt street stock, and let me tell you what, Eau Rouge and Radeon is quite a sight in an asphalt street stock. So yes, tune in for that one, guys. Then next Thursday, SimCar is back, but we're not going to be at Imola. We're actually going to be at VIR because of the iRacing issues a couple weeks ago. I do need to update these upcoming broadcasts because on Saturday, if Michelle Lynn, you're still watching, there's going to be a Formula V race on this channel as well. So tune in for that one. And then next Sunday, we're back at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Times. Formula Fords that are headed to Winton. Always great to see cars driving around that track. It should be a good one as well. Randall, closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts. This race we kind of expected wasn't going to be necessarily the most exciting, but Winton next week should prove to be quite interesting for these cars. So I'm already excited for next Sunday's race.
I'm excited as well, but I'm even more excited for the Spec Racer Fords coming up here in about an hour's time. We will see you all then.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was
our
that was the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new
Conspiracy
content.
confirmed.
But
Yes.
but